Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 9th, 2024 Portsmouth School Board meeting. Let's have a roll call, please.
Sure. Liz Barrett?
Yes, I'm on Zoom from home at One Freedom Circle. I'm home. My son's sick. He's in the other room. Thanks.
Pip Clues? Here. Tish Campbell?
Here.
Carrie Nolte?
Here.
Brian French? Nancy Clayberg?
Here.
Lisa Rappaport?
Here.
Lee Hudson?
Here.
Byron Maddow?
Here.
Rick Hugener?
Here.
Nathan Delaney?
Before we stand for the pledge, I would just like to introduce our new teacher representative, Rick Hugener. He's an earth science teacher at Portsmouth High School. Still earth science? Is that correct? Okay. And he's near and dear to my heart personally. He was my daughter Diana's soccer coach for 4 years at Portsmouth High. And he also was my son Michael's earth science teacher. And to this day, if my son sees Rick had all the kids build volcanoes when they were in the earth science class. And my son will look at Rick and go, volcano! It's so cute. So anyway, Rick, thank you for being here
Thanks for
with
having
us. We welcome you and hope you enjoy your involvement with us. Okay, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Volcano,
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have announcements and recognitions. Does anyone have anything they would like to say?
So I have a few. First, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Ed McPherson, longtime custodian at New Franklin School, who, upon his retirement a few years ago, had come back to New Franklin and was a lunch monitor. In having conversations, I did not know Ed well. In having conversations with staff, I know that there are a lot of just crushed people because he's been a real piece of the fabric of that building for a long period of time. And just somebody who was associated with, I think Joanne Simons, principal, talked about how he did not hesitate to call out students on things that he thought that they should be doing or not doing, and he also did not hesitate to call out the adults on the things that they should. But people appreciated and appreciated him and his contributions to the building. So I know that. At my own house, when my fourth grader discovered that Big Ed was not going to be in lunch, we went through some tears and we had to talk about, just life and how it works. And so my heart goes out to all of his friends and family and the crew at New Franklin, and there are services for him this upcoming weekend. So.
Okay, I have a few things. I think we all get the all the schools' weekly newsletters and announcements, and the high school one. What caught my eye was the Business Pathways, the Future Business Leaders of America, the Student Leadership Conference. We had two students. Ben Gottlieb got first place in accounting, and Mason Patterson got second place in healthcare administration. So, we often talk about the athletes and maybe the plays and all that. It's nice to give some recognition to those that are involved in other kinds of activities besides that. So that caught my eye. And also there was an interesting article in the Paperclip. That newspaper is on the high school website. Yeah. And it's really interesting. If you have a chance, read it. There's some interesting articles about staff, students, and this particular edition had several profiles on the English as a second language students. So that was kind of interesting to, hear what it's like to be a student that comes to the high school and doesn't speak any English. And then how they, most of the comments were positive, but some were, not too happy. But it was kind of an interesting article, caught my eye. So if you have a chance, read some of those. And also, I don't know if you saw it, the Dondero newsletter. If you have Eclipse glasses, don't throw them away. You can bring them to Dondero, and they're going to be recycled for an eclipse in October in
Mexico, I
Mexico?
believe.
I think it said Mexico. So if you don't know what to, if you don't know what to do with your glasses, bring them to Dondero.
Send them back to your school. So if your
Oh,
kids come
okay.
home
Yeah.
with glasses, send them back to the school. We will,
We'll get them
we'll
all
work
to
on
one
getting them
place.
out to some place where they can
Yeah,
get used.
I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so we'll move on. Any
We got
other?
a couple other quick ones. So, all
go ahead.
right, just for the public, our communication survey is out at this point for the next couple of weeks. This is the school communication performance evaluation scope survey, and it's done through the National School PR Association. That is going to run right up to the beginning of the break. We have stuff out to, right now it's out to staff and to parents and community. Where the goal of that is to collect information about how are folks internally and externally receiving information from the school district, what works, what doesn't work, and what are people's preferences on how they would like to receive their information. So we're looking forward to getting that back. And then we have a second wave that will be going to high school level students to get that same information from them. We're in the final days of kindergarten enrollment. We've talked about this at the board a couple times. We have made a hard push. Hopefully, anytime you log on Facebook, you are seeing a kindergarten thing flashing in your face, because we've done some ad buying in Facebook to try to target folks. But Friday the 12th is it, and we are hoping we've got everybody in at that point, because then we have some really important decisions to start making based on what do we think those enrollment numbers look like at kindergarten, and how that is that going to affect our distribution of staffing across the district potentially, including, but not exclusively limited to, some of the grade levels at Dondero that were bigger than we wanted them to be this year. So if you have a student who is going to be ready and of age, please make sure you have registered. And if you have a neighbor, a cousin, somebody else you know, call them and be like, hey, make sure you register, because it's going to have a big impact on some other things that we want to be doing. And last but not least, I just wanted to shout out to Dondero for Science Day. Science Day was awesome. It was a fun opportunity. For those of you who don't know, Dondero brought in people from all over the community who were teaching different lessons to kids, and it was like it was set up. It was all science based, and it was set up almost like kids were at a conference. They got to pick things they're going to go to, and we may have had somebody who did some presenting on AI, our own Byron, and I got to sit in the back of the room and watch the Byron show with kids on AI. It was awesome, and awesome conversation. It was great to see a bunch of different community partners interacting with our kids. There was a ton of work that went into organizing that event, and I just saw a lot of smiling kids who were excited about learning neat stuff. There was a squid room. There was some squid dissection. People were like, you have to go to the squid room. And I walked in and was like, oh my God, this is the squid room. And held my nose and walked back out. But just lots of like neat activities for students around science that weren't just fun, but really pushed them around their understanding of some of these things. So kudos to Dondero, and kudos to board members who participate in those types of things.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Anyone else? Okay, let's go to the next item, the consent agenda. We have two sets of minutes, the March 26, 2024 non-public meeting and the March 26, 2024 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Tish, second?
Second.
Second. Oh, was that Kerry and Tish?
Kerry.
Okay, sorry. You sounded like Kerry. Okay, all those, any discussion on the minutes? Pip?
I have a couple of things. Let's see, specifically on the regular meeting minutes. So one thing we've talked about before, that if there is a no vote or an abstention, that the person's name should be noted next to that one, so we know who voted against something and a reason if they've given one. So I think in this case it was just an abstention, but I think it should still note who that was. And then under old business, and on the vote for the use of restraints policy, I am noted as the maker of the motion, but I think I was the one who called for the motion and did not make the motion. So I don't know who did make the motion, but if anyone remembers.
me.
It was you. It was, okay, so it's currently Brian Nolte.
Okay.
So
Got it.
I think it was a combination perhaps of Carrie first and then Brian seconding.
I like
But Brian Nolte is mentioned a couple times, so that should
Yeah.
be
Yep.
corrected.
Yep.
And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pip. You're always so good about catching all those errors. All in favor?
Roll
Need a
call.
roll call because of the Zoom?
All right,
everything's roll
because
call
Liz
tonight.
isn't here. Okay. Could you do a roll call vote?
Sure.
Patty?
Liz Barrett.
I'm sorry. I guess, Nancy, I do have a question about the non-public. I know that, and maybe this is a Patty question and more procedural, but it seems a little off to me that the down at the bottom is where it has Byron and I actually, and then also Lee actually being at the meeting. And so at first I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I was there. But I'm checked, no, and it does say Lisa was on the phone, but then us being there isn't there until the bottom. So I don't know if that's just general procedure, but I think it would be helpful to me if it could be moved to the top area where everybody's attendance is.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I mean,
Oh,
I guess the answer is that was the point at which in the meeting, we were in the middle of that discussion. I had already written up, and that was when folks arrived. So that's when I recorded them. The people, if I don't include you at the beginning because you weren't present for the first part of the meeting, I guess I would, the answer is yes, this is process, this is normal protocol. I enter them in the minutes when they arrive so that anything that is in front of or before your arrival, you're not expected to have been familiar with because you didn't arrive until afterwards.
Okay, that makes sense. I didn't. This almost looked like a form document. It was so fancy.
Well,
Nathan,
let me just say, because you're about to vote on this was part of what came out of your revision of the minutes policy. We've collected these. I mean, I've done these the whole time I've been here, meetings that I'm attending. This is what your non-public looks like. It effectively has you entering public session, which we do, and then moving to go into non-public. Then you come out of non-public and actually adjourn your public session because all of those non-public sessions have to begin and end in a public session. And you'll note that for anyone who ends up having to do this, we only provide what we need to legally to identify what was discussed. And it's important to note that no actions were taken or decisions made because you haven't been voting, in my experience, you haven't been voting on things in the non-public session. You wait and bring those out for public session discussion and voting. So it is, city legal had something to do with building this 3 or 4 years back. So that's the format.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Lisa.
I'm really sorry. I just had one other question on the regular meeting minutes, on the mention of the overnight field trip memo. I did have a question around that in terms of when we're traveling, how we are supporting LGBTQ students, and I just would like that reflected in the minutes since that trip is to Florida. And I just want to have that on the record, if we can slip that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we add that, Nathan?
I'm looking.
Zach?
I'm trying to.
It is page, let's see, I'm
Overnight field trip
sorry.
memo, got it.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, with those changes, can we take a vote?
Liz Barrett.
yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French not here. Nancy Clayberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Approved.
Okay, thank you, Patty. We're now into the public comment section of our meeting. Are you here for public comment? No? Well, welcome. Okay, if we don't have anyone here, do we have anyone on Zoom for public comment?
No one with
Patty?
hands raised. Nope.
Okay. All right, we will close the public comment session. I guess I'm supposed to do that. Now we will go to the public hearing, which is the acceptance of the Little Harbor donation, and I turn it over to Nathan.
Thank you. So, yeah, consistent with your policy, it's important that the board take action on donations in excess of $5,000. The memo, which really does a nice job of describing all of these donations tonight, did not make your packet. I'm not sure how Paulette and I miscued, but I'm sure it's my fault. So, but I have the memo, but you don't. Obviously, there isn't any public comment. I don't know if there's anybody here for the public hearing, but according to your policy, things less than $5,000, well, now I'm not quoting the policy in my head, I'm trying to, let's just
I
say,
can get you.
let's just say it's less than $5,000, the superintendent can approve. 5,000 and above, it has to
Close.
come, is it close?
All right, so $500.
$500? It's all you?
Yeah. Up to 5,000, just on the board agenda, you can approve without a public hearing. After 5,000.
Thank you.
Then you have a public hearing for anything that's a.
I clearly didn't read that before we got started.
So that's, well,
Thank you.
Just happened to hit that one
So,
tonight, so.
so tonight, in a moment, later in the agenda, or whenever you want to do it, you need to vote on the acceptance of a series of donations, but there needs to be a public hearing about the donation being made to Little Harbor School, because its dollar amount is not $7,200 as is in the agenda, it's $7,750. So let me take just a minute, I think, and tell you that coming from the Clipper Fund for Excellence in Education, there are 3 awards that have been made to teachers within your school department. The first is to Katie Winglass, kindergarten teacher at Dondero Elementary. That's for a proposal she titled The Regulated Classroom in the amount of $3,000. Supplies and materials that will support the implementation of classroom strategies and tools that help young students regulate their bodies and minds, becoming more attentive and effective learners. The second donation coming from the Clipper Fund for Megan Rice, 6th grade science teacher at Portsmouth Middle School, is to support Outdoor Learning Classroom 2.0 in the amount of $4,995, which is for the purchase and placement of multiple high-performance picnic tables under the existing protected overhang, providing ADA compliance and wireless access, and expanding outdoor learning opportunities for students there at the middle school. In addition to that, Mark McNabb and McNabb Properties donated an additional $2,000 to that same program being launched by Megan Rice at the middle school. That's a $2,000 donation from McNabb Properties. So the final, which is the one the hearing is about, is for Andrew French, art teacher at Little Harbor Elementary School, in the amount of $7,750 for community displays and art show exhibiting panels. These are large mobile folding display panels. They'll support efforts to increase the number of exhibitions and events that celebrate the visual arts work of students and create more opportunities for school and community display. This was a conversation that we had in the budget process, and through this application and award, Mr. French is helping to make that happen sooner, and we'll have more opportunity to do this for other buildings as a result. So you would open that up for, go ahead.
And I just say, for those who have been on the board for a while, you might know exactly what the Clipper Foundation is and what it does. If you don't, it is a nonprofit in the community, founded by an alum a while ago, and basically it raises money for teachers who have innovative projects that they think are going to advance good teaching and learning here in the school district. And it might be things that we might not be in a position to fund, but it's stuff that's experimental that we endorse when projects come through. You have to get the approval of the principal that this is something that's in line with what we're trying to accomplish. And this year, the Clipper Foundation works with both us and SAU 50, and we meet a few times a year. They changed up their process this year where they created a cohort. So that people could come in on half days and work with people who had previously received funding, because it's a competitive grant process. So you have to go in, you make a proposal, you're either going to get approved for all of what you want or part of what you want. And so this year that was reworked, and they went through multiple kind of training sessions to try to help people kind of better understand what the Clipper Foundation is trying to do and create better grant proposals that were more likely to get funded. So this is a very important partner for us, the Clipper Foundation, and it's a unique thing. I know from other parts of New England, these types of foundations do not necessarily exist in a lot of communities, and it's something that we're really thankful for. So I just want to make sure I give the Clipper Foundation its due.
Excellent.
Okay, so for the public hearing, is there anyone that would like to speak about this donation to Little Harbor School in the amount of $7,200? Do we have any members that would like to speak about that?
So I'll give you one more process piece real quick.
Sure.
And I'm not looking to, so just in terms of your policy, in terms of thinking about public hearing, you can accept, as a board, you can accept or reject donations. And there's certain reasons why you would, most of the time, like, you're gonna give us some money? We'll take the money. But it's also about property, other things that might be donated to the school district. Someone might be interested in giving you something. If that's given to you, then you have to think about what's the upkeep that might be associated with accepting a donation? What is the intent of the donor? And is it in line or not in line with our own objectives? Might we come into conflict at some point? And two, there's an element in your policy around making sure, trying to be thoughtful about equal distribution of funds. So I think that's in there so that if someone, somebody in the Woodlands wanted to give $100,000 to Dundero, but only Dundero, that the board might be like, well, thank you, but we don't want to create inequitable outcomes for our kids in different elementary schools. Would you be interested in restructuring those funds for elementary kids in general, that type of thing? So those are the elements that you would consider. And then, of course, because it's a larger amount of money, people from the public who would like to come in and weigh in on whether or not you should accept a donation have the opportunity to do that. So that's your
Okay.
process.
Well, seeing that we don't have anyone here to speak in the
Yeah,
public.
Nancy, I'm sorry.
Yes, Liz.
I know you had asked for the board. I guess I'm just wondering, because the packet only says Little Harbor donation, is there any, would we be stalling anything if we waited until the next meeting and we had the information in the packet? So that information was more presented and noticed accordingly? Would there be any harm in waiting?
Kerry?
I wanted to motion to suspend the rules to consider item XA with the donations that were just described sooner.
Okay.
To finish that up, because that does detail what Liz was speaking to, the amounts and the specific funds.
Okay.
I second that.
All in favor of moving it up?
Roll call.
Oh, we need 2/3.
2/3, yep.
You already
Okay.
suspended the rules, yeah.
Okay, roll call, please.
Liz
Patty.
Barrett.
Liz?
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yep.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, shall we vote on the approving the grants and donations from the Clipper Foundation, and then the last one from McNabb, Mark McNabb donation?
Please noting that Little Harbor is $7,750, not $7,200.
Oh, okay. Can everyone make that change?
Motion,
1,750, okay.
motion to approve the 4 donations with the correction that
Second.
7,000.
Byron is the second. Okay, roll call. Patty, can you start with the person after Liz?
Sure.
So we can stagger it a little bit.
Yep. Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Passes.
Carrie, thank you for making that recommendation.
You're welcome,
That
Nancy.
makes sense. Okay, let's move on. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the superintendent's report. Zach?
And just in that, it's just, you just have correspondence from a teacher who's resigning, Jen Chump from Dundero School. No additional action needed on that one. And then Nathan has the financials.
Okay. Nathan?
I would invite any questions that you might have. The news continues to look very much like it did. You continue to see actuals rise and the encumbrances fall in most cases. We talked some about the encumbrance in our last meeting, and Andrew and Wengert, our accountant, and I have been working again with payroll to try to sleuth some of the programmatic challenges. The system certainly can and should do it, but week by week, payroll by payroll, I guess I should say, we get some outcomes that seem unpredictable. It's got something to do with the way they're setting it up. So we're doing a lot of manual work to go back and double check and make sure that our encumbrances are accurate, which is why a couple of the bigger pockets, I continue to leave an asterisk on to question. But in general, I'm comfortable with what the numbers continue to suggest, so.
Are there any questions for Nathan? Thank you, Nathan.
I have a question.
Yes, Liz?
I guess I'm just wondering with the, I don't know if there's traditionally been a large amount with substitutes, but I'm wondering with the current budget we have, if we need to factor in the larger overage or the overage with substitute teachers into the current budget at all.
So I would answer the question, Liz, a great question, and we've talked a little bit about that, but let me just go back and say that you're carrying a balance in teachers, which is related to breakage, where you had teachers hired at lower rates than those that had preceded them. So we budgeted for a teacher who was here, but when that teacher left, somebody that replaced them was, for one reason or another, less expensive. Some of what is in substitutes right now are the result of substitutes being paid for teachers who are no longer here. It may be the teacher that's on an extended leave of absence no longer being paid, in which case I'll correct at some point and move the sub out of the sub line and into the teacher line. Additionally, we have some situations where the teacher, for one reason or another, has left mid-year. You have acted on those as they've arisen. I guess maybe there's only one of those. I shouldn't make it sound like there's a lot. I think there was one. But the substitute cost can move. So that 250,000 of overage that you're looking at will not be that large ultimately as amended or as adjusted, but because it will continue to be large, and it has been large every year I've been here, we made an adjustment in the budget, just a first step. We made an adjustment this year, adding over $120,000 to our sublines to try to right-size them and get closer to what the actuals have looked like. I think we're going to have to do some right-sizing of that again a couple more times. It's hard to tackle it all in one bite when you've got all these other priorities, and the breakage does seem to support us each year. But I think one of the things we're moving to with substitutes is that our rates will have to rise to be more competitive to try to continue to bring folks in, or we'll have to come up with new methodologies, new approaches to providing subs the way that we do to cover the learning needs of kids in the absence of their educators. So that number won't look this bad, and yes, we've added to the budget for it, but we'll have to continue to be mindful of that in future years.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nathan? Will we be okay on June 30th?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, no, I don't have, bottom line, I think we're really looking fine.
Good shape.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Nathan.
Nancy,
Yes.
I just have a follow-up for Zach. I know there's not a report, but I'm just thinking about the conversation we just had on donations.
Yep.
And I guess my question is, it sounds like maybe anything coming to the schools over $500, like the PTO and all those contributions, is something that maybe should be coming to us.
I don't know if there's something built into the PTO relationship where that would not be the case. But I think it's I mean, your policy does say any donation over $500 would at least be on the agenda, and then anything over 5,000 would be public hearing.
So maybe that can go to policy.
Actually, we coincidentally are reviewing a policy on crowdfunding this week. So that we can discuss that. I don't think that situation is identified exactly in that policy, but I think it's all related, so maybe we could check the other policy to see.
So I've been dragging my heels on your crowdfunding, so you may not get all the feedback that you need on that, but what the other one that you're looking at is gifts and donations, because the city did a fairly extensive review and recycling of their gifts and donations policy. The memo that I prepared that I failed to put in Paulette's hands in a timely way, clearly, is something that you should expect to continue to see to help describe donations that are received. One of the nuances will be that I don't know in our first draft that the donations that fall to student activity funds in the schools get caught by the same net right now. So we'll have to talk about how we do that depending on what policy dictates. Generally, these are general fund donations that are coming to benefit general fund and special revenues, but they're tracked and managed in the central office so that we are aware of them and working with them. Some of the work that happens between the building principals and the PTAs, I don't want to suggest we're not aware of them, but they don't process through the central office. So that one will be another layer of our bureaucracy to try to make sure that we loop that in. So.
Okay, thank you. We will talk about that in policy. Yes, Lisa?
I think along those lines, I would just like to see in some way, I don't know if it's in the crowdfunding policy or in one of our other policies around donations, but tens of thousands of dollars a year are coming into the schools specifically for busing through the PTAs. And it's a huge amount of money every year, and it's a recurring expense every year. And I would love to find some way of at least accounting for it. I wonder sometimes about equity around that fundraising school by school and what access that gives students in each building to extracurriculars and field trips. And, you know, it may all be totally fine the way that it is, but I don't know that we have our full arms around how much of that money we're getting every year and how it's being spent. So I'd love to be able to look at that just so that we can be intentional about how that money is raised, how it's allocated, and maybe whether it should be in the budget if it's stuff that's happening during the school day.
Yep.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about before too.
I know.
You know, one of my concerns around equity is, you know, the having if we're funding core stuff through like transportation through PTA, then do we get into a PTA arms race where there's, you know, depending on the school you're at, you have different opportunities because of your PTA, and if it's significantly different, then how do I don't have an answer to that, but I think about it, and I think it's worth trying to get a better accounting of what does that look like overall.
No, I really appreciate that you're looking at it, because it's also just in different variables year to year. So when teachers are trying to plan trips and then they're coming and like,
Totally.
we need the money.
Yeah, I feel obligated to say one more thing. I suggested it doesn't process through central office, but to give you all comfort, all of the funds that flow through the student activity funds are in fact recorded. They are auditable, and they are audited annually as a part of the independent audit. They provide access to that information to the city's auditors, and a member of my staff in the business office takes a regular look. And the function that we provide is that we help spread interest earned on the accounts, which gives a peekaboo on a regular basis to see where the balances are, and we have access to all of the information. So there is oversight. It just isn't active participation in the process of the dollars coming in and going out on a daily basis. So,
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, everyone. Carrie, did you have something else?
I wanted to highlight the peekaboo financial term that I think is really important for us to make sure we note. But I think, and this just happened right before this meeting, but in the strategic planning work around, what's our group called? Personalized learning. I think that's part of it. There's a big focus on, field trips, experiences in the community, connections with the community. And so I think something that the district first needs to document and understand kind of how that's happening in different places, but we'll probably be coming through that strategic planning process.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Where are we? We don't take a vote on the financial report, correct? Okay,
business.
we'll go to old business and turn the meeting over to Pip Clues.
All right, thanks. So these policies are all policies that we reviewed at our last meeting, and they're back for the second reading. Let's see, and in this case, you did not get any revised versions, and that is entirely my fault, so I apologize for that. But they're very minimal revisions that were discussed, not at the policy committee meeting, but just at our board meeting last time. So I will just note those now as we go through. So for the first one, meeting minutes, BEDG, in line 9, there was a request to ensure that what was stated there was aligned with our current policy. So I'm just going to pull that up. So what I would recommend in that case is instead of, it currently says the board will appoint a minute taker. And I think based on what we discussed, I think it should be the superintendent or designee will appoint a minute taker. Because that is how it's working currently. Because our board does not assign somebody on the board. Does anyone, I guess I'm sorry, we should probably take a motion to approve first, and then we can discuss it.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So does anybody object to that change or have concerns about it? Okay. That was the only one.
Can I have, sorry. I just want to note, so I was so enthralled with the discussion last time about policies, and I know we had a pretty vigorous discussion, but I think it would be helpful going forward, speaking of minutes, if stuff like that, where there's a clear discussion about, maybe this is some guidance we could give to a minute taker, but when there's clear discussion about what the board would like to see a change of, it would be helpful to have that in the minutes. I know the minutes that we just approved for the last meeting, it's very brief in each section about what we discussed in the policies, and I know our discussions were not brief, and so I think it would be helpful to, at least just to notate what the board discussed about what they wanted for revisions. So unfortunately, I usually take good notes. I didn't have any notes from that meeting on these policies, so I'm just a little bit concerned that those aren't reflected in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Any other discussion? I'm sorry, I took it away from you. I didn't mean
That's
to.
okay. I should say, actually, there's a continuation of that same change, which is on line 10, it says, should the person so appointed be absent from all or part of a board meeting? And the change that I would suggest is, should the person appointed not have access to all or part of a meeting? Because this refers specifically to non-public meetings, and in our case, the person who is doing our minutes would not be at our non-public meetings. But it's not that they're absent, they just are not here at all, ever. So I'd recommend that change as well.
So how would it read?
I can give you this in writing to make it easier, but it would read from beginning at line 9, it would read, the board will appoint, I'm sorry, no, it will not read. It would read, the superintendent or designee will appoint a minute taker / recording clerk to prepare the minutes of each meeting. Should the person so appointed not have access to all or part of a meeting, e.g. a non-public session, the chair, subject to being overruled by the board, shall appoint a person to take the minutes.
So I understand the second part of your suggestion, but I would tell you that's what you do without doing it when I take the minutes in non-public. But I would also suggest you can have a minute taker take the minutes in non-public. It's just one more person in a non-public meeting that you don't necessarily need to be there. And I've done that because I'm already there. But as you make this, as you consider a change, I would say that person doesn't always have to not be present or not have access. That's just how we've conducted ourselves.
Okay. I don't think that changes whether we make this change or not, though, because this is only in case they're not there. It doesn't mean they can't be there. So this is just in order to align with our current practice. Okay, are there any other questions on this? Then I guess we'll take a roll call vote.
To approve policy BEDG with edits as suggested. Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the next policy is false alarms, bomb, active shooter, and other such threats, EBCC.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. There is one line line 65. Let's see, let me just find that first. And 65, and this copy has nothing on it, so that's not very helpful.
Yeah, I have mine right here.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking at a different version. Okay, thank you. Okay, the request here was to make sure that we were consistent with the name of our response plan. And so I did look into that, and currently on line 66, it is described as the District Crisis Prevention and Response Plan. The only difference in our name is that it should say Emergency Response Plan. So it should be the District Crisis Prevention and Emergency Response Plan. And that is, that's referred to a few times in here, so we should just add that word emergency before response anytime it appears in this policy. And then in looking into that, Byron and I discussed a bit that there are many, I think Liz brought this up at the last meeting, there are many names of plans that are similar to this and operations, and we thought it might be a good idea to do a complete review of policies that refer to any of those plans, because there does happen to be some discrepancy in how those things are noted. So I actually thought it might be worth even making a little glossary of what these plans are, because it's pretty confusing going back and forth between all the different names of the plans. I'm sure that Patty probably already has this somewhere, but I think just making sure that it's consistently noted across policies would be helpful, because sometimes when we use the sample policies, the NHSBA calls it something else than what we have on our books. So I'm going to recommend that to the policy committee at some point, that we review all those and make things consistent. But for this policy, that's the only recommended change. Are there any questions?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Sorry. The other change, I know that the document that we're looking at, Pip, or the document that's on the city website for the packet, has those links that are all eboardsolutions.com versus to the actual RSA. So I just want to be sure that those are updated, because that was another edit on
Yes,
that.
you're right. I did check those, and they all go where they should go.
Yeah, they're all redirects. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're ready for a vote.
Voting on policy EBCC with edits as discussed. Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the change of school assignment, best interest and manifest hardship, policy JCA. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I believe there were no recommended changes to that policy.
It was just a question, I think it was a
Yes.
question I had in my notes. So Carrie had asked whether or not that could be used in terms of intra-district shifting. And the answer is yes. It could be a process where we would consider the shifting of elementary schools or classes within the district.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions about that one? Okay, we'll take a vote.
Liz,
This
does
is
Liz
getting
have her
it,
hand
I
up?
think.
Oh, no, that's an old hand up.
That's an old
But
hand.
I vote yes.
Okay.
Start with Liz.
Okay, well, we'll start with Liz then. Liz. Liz said yes. Pip.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, and the final one, admission JFAA. Again, there were some questions and discussion about that one, but I believe they were all answered during our last discussion. I'm sorry, again, I
was one-
forgot to
I
ask
think it
for a
was-
motion to.
Okay, I'll wait for that.
a
Motion to approve JFAA.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Zach.
So I just had in my notes, there was a question around age limit for folks. And we know that's up through 22 for students in special education, but there was a question of, I think it was kind of like, can a 30-year-old enroll at the high school type of thing? And no, so it's 21 is the max out age based on New Hampshire state statute, except for students who have special education plan that would take them through 22. And then, of course, it's compulsory education, 6 through 17 in the state. But anyways, the question was the scenario of, can the 25-year-old enroll at the high school? No, they cannot.
So I guess the question would be then, do we feel it's important to add that higher end?
So it's
age
covered. So it's covered under statute.
Yeah.
And I just had to find the statutory reference. So it's one, and for those who are interested, it's 189(1)(a), duty to provide education. That's where that was. So.
Okay, and on a similar note, that was the request that was made, was to add the reference to the other RSA, which is 193(12), which is the legal residence required RSA at the bottom. So maybe we should add both of those so that they're easy to reference. Yes, Lisa.
I had a question around age limits for kindergarten registration in particular, because I wasn't sure if we need to have anything in policy that states, you can't come to kindergarten at 6 or 7 if we have that limit. And I don't know, do you know what I mean? Because sometimes people will hold their kids back for any number of reasons. And I think you said that we did not need that, but I'm just trying to remember where we landed.
I've never seen it in policy. I mean,
Okay.
But, you can always add things. But I think there's it's up to schools as to where they're going to enroll kids based on a number of factors. Some of it's academic, some of it's developmental. So I think right now, if you came with a 9-year-old, you wanted to enroll in kindergarten because we could be really ahead of their peers. We would have conversations with you about proper placement and where that would be and would not be kindergarten. So.
Fair enough.
And I think that line 20, class assignment, addresses that a bit as well, that they'll be placed wherever appropriate. So I don't think we need to name any.
That's a good question, and it's good because it's, those are sometimes policy. Sometimes those type of policy things are necessary, so we don't get into fights that on the surface feel like it's obvious that we wouldn't do that. But sometimes, and sometimes we want that protective language, but I think we're okay in this case. Yep.
Okay, so in this case, are there any other questions? Okay. So for this one, we would just be adding those 2 RSA references mentioned, and I will pass those along specifically so we don't have to note them right now. And we'll take a vote.
Approving policy JFAA with changes as stated. Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Claiberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yes.
Byron Maddow.
Yes.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Clues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Carrie Nolte.
Yes.
Passes.
Thank you, Pip. And I think there's a meeting coming up Friday?
That's
Friday
right.
morning.
Yeah.
Okay. Of the policy committee. Okay, let's go to general assurances. We'll hand it over to Patty.
Thank you. So this should actually be titled Program Assurances, because the last time we met, we went over the general assurances, and the general assurances and the program assurances are a little bit different. General assurances are things that the board had to approve and agree to as a result of receiving any kind of grant money from the government. But a program assurance, which is what this set of information is that you have linked here, is specific to the title programs that we participate in, Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, when we are eligible for those funds. And so these program assurances are signed by the superintendent, so he will be signing these. These are for your information so that you are aware of what happens. We are waiting to get preliminary allocations from the state for what we might be receiving for any of these grants, if we're eligible for any or some or all of them. And we will wait for that. Hopefully that will come out in May, is what we're hearing now. But this is just an informational piece for you to have so that you know some of the different funding sources that we use for different things like professional development, ELL, Title I for students who need additional support.
Okay. Now, no vote is required on this, correct? It's just informational?
Informational.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the topic? No? Okay.
It's a thrilling topic, I know. It's, it's my world. It's fun.
Very wordy.
Yes.
Nice little peekaboo into what you do, Patty.
Yes, yeah, it's a nightmare, we know.
Now I've begun the peekaboo game.
Great job, Nathan.
I should have indexed that on
Oh,
the
my
video,
goodness.
so I can go back and watch.
Okay, thank you, Patty, Nathan, Zach, for all of that.
That's awesome.
We'll leave it in your hands. Okay, next we are on to the library trustee minutes. Oh, okay, we have committee updates. We have the library trustee minutes, which was given to us by Brian, strategic planning minutes by Zach, and the teaching and learning minutes by Patty. Do you want to comment on any of your minutes, anyone?
A library question, actually.
You do?
I-
Okay.
I do want to make one comment on one that didn't make the packet because we did a meeting so late, but we are going to put out a schedule for the superintendent evaluation committee that we met last week. And so we'll be putting out a schedule of like, what are the dates, and then put the questions before all you guys for the approval of what will end up in those questionnaires. But that's it at a high level. Did I miss anything?
I think we were hoping to maybe send things out earlier just because as we backtrack the calendar without another April meeting. So maybe that week after April vacation, we'll be sending stuff for feedback with the hope that it'll get fully approved on that first May meeting.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. It's you, Brian, Kerry, and Lee.
Lee.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the work of that committee. Yes, Pip?
I have a quick question for that committee. Are you working from the same document that we used last year? And were you able to access that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
We're using that as a starting point, so we're going to take a fresh eye at it again.
Good, perfect.
Okay, any other questions about any of these reports? Lisa?
I have a question about the strategic planning committee minutes. And I guess what I'm curious about at this point is what our plan is going forward to have minutes for all of the groups that are meeting. And also what our plan is going forward for providing updates on the school district website. Because our page right now for Portrait of a Graduate and strategic planning doesn't have any meetings there.
Yep.
And I know it can be really, really a bit of a process to get that synced up, but I'm just mindful of the idea that I don't want to get to June when we're approving this and be in a situation where there's not clarity about what was done to get us there that slows us down.
Yep. So one is, I was on there this afternoon, with some draft changes, which I have not published yet to the website. Partially because I was anticipating the question.
I know it was a shocker.
Yeah, right. So there'll be some additions to just some boostering of what's actually in the Portrait of Graduate section, including the actual. There's a couple of graphics that will be in there. There'll be links to the meetings that led up to the process that are kind of the stuff that we have access to, the board level stuff that led up to the process Portrait of Graduate. And then we, actually I'm curious, this is a ghost written set of minutes provided by the assistant superintendent. And whether or not, I think one of the things we've been trying to gauge is what's the appropriate style of minutes to go and how deep to go. So we've been recording with Otter AI. So now we've got transcripts, and we're trying to like narrow down those transcripts. Not every session has, but we were doing it this afternoon. We did it at the last safe learning environment group. I don't know what you did to your last one.
No, just took a
Just
bunch
do
of minutes, and then
minutes.
tomorrow's meeting,
So if this is I think one of the things we'd be curious about is like if this kind of approach would be robust enough to feel like it was appropriate in terms of people able to keep track of what's going on, or not. I think trying to figure out where that is. Like I said, we are collecting either transcripts or some handwritten stuff, and I think we're still trying to zero in on what that should look like. So, so I'm open to whether or not, and that might not be a conversation for now, but
Okay.
it also can be.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't want to spend hours here tonight, like going back and forth over that minutia, but I think big picture, it seemed like when we were getting to the end of Portrait of a Graduate, there were several people on the board who had a lot of questions about how we got
Yes. Yep.
there. And I'd hate to be in
In that same spot.
spot
Absolutely.
at the end,
Yep.
especially
Totally
with all the
understand.
hard work that people are putting in so many directions. And in being part of one of the subcommittees, I know that we've had some questions as we're talking about what the other groups might be doing so that we can make sure that, everything kind of fits together nicely in the end. And I think it would be easier to have those minutes where possible so that you could say, oh, they're talking about this piece of differentiated learning over here. So then if we talk about it differently from a curriculum standpoint, if they fit together, and then we're also not doing the same thing.
Right, and and ironically, that actually came up today when we were in the personalized learning group, where this was only the first meeting after the big meeting for that group, and it was really helpful for people to scroll down and be able to see what had happened in regular curriculum and what had happened in safe learning so far, to help gauge both of those questions. One, are we on the right track in terms of kind of the scope of the project and what we're trying to do? And then two, there's already these conversations about what's dovetailing. Oh, they're already talking about that. We're talking about that a little bit. And let's be thoughtful. Now, we didn't come to conclusions like, well, we should stop talking about that because the Safe Crew is talking about it. But there was acknowledgement of seeing those things and starting as we move through our next couple of meetings, being in a position, I think, where we're going to have to come to some conclusions about how we're not wanting to be redundant while at the same time wanting to be complementary to what's happening in other groups. So it will be interesting to see how that all shakes out. But it didn't go to minutes. In that case, it went to the worksheet that we were
document,
using, the
yeah.
document,
Yeah.
the shared document, and that's what people were looking at.
So that piece makes sense, and I think the only other thing I just want to be mindful of is making sure that we're giving people in the community enough clarity, because there's not an opportunity right now for folks who have an interest to see what's coming and share any feedback.
Yep.
And I think there is an interest in having that opportunity.
Yep. No,
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on any of these? Go
library. I
ahead.
was curious about library. So,
Brian?
go ahead.
No, you asked Brian.
Oh, no.
No, I just had a follow up for Lisa.
Oh,
I just want to, the piece of being able to share, I guess I wonder, I think it's just so contextual, and it's with educators, and like, if there is a thought on providing feedback, I just want to be really clear about how that might happen, or like what the mechanism would be for that.
Well, as an example, when we had the superintendent search committee, there was an email, and it was on the website, and people who wanted to send any questions or offer any feedback, it was public and they could click on it. Now, not everybody did, but some people did use that to send a message to the committee. I'm not saying that's the level that we need right now, but at a minimum, I think the spirit of having transparency in what we do with public funds and what we do for our community as a board, it should involve opportunities for teachers, for parents, for students, for community members to see what's coming. Because otherwise we're getting to the end of the process and then we're saying, this is where we landed, what do you think? But it doesn't really give them an opportunity to see as it's unfolding. And I think that earlier this year, when we had some motions that were ultimately tabled, the spirit of the conversation at that point was for these to be public, for there to be posted agendas, for there to be posted minutes. We also had talked about Zoom, and I know that some folks had some concerns about Zoom, and Zach has raised those, and so we kind of said, okay, if we're not going to do Zoom, we're going to really go into much more effort to produce better minutes. And that was sort of in deference to not having the live web feed, because people had concerns about the feasibility of that and whether that would shut down organic and genuine conversation in the room. But having sort of stepped away from that, It doesn't give people another way to know what's happening unless there's minutes.
And I totally agree with that, and that was my commitment at the time. So we have to up our game to make sure that we're delivering on what we committed to at that meeting when folks had initially had there were some proposals that would have gone in a different direction. Our intent, we need to live up to what was said at that meeting. I agree.
So the minutes, having minutes from those subcommittee meetings addresses the transparency.
It should.
Okay.
I mean, we just haven't seen, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the minutes are still being worked on, and some of the meetings were pretty recent, so we just haven't.
Well, I know the subcommittee that I've been heading up, the minutes actually were posted to the calendar page from the previous meeting. So in the actual city calendar, they're posted in there with the
But they're
agenda
not
and the
on the-
minutes, but they're not on that page.
But how would I know that?
Right, right, no, that's
I
true,
mean,
that's true.
I'm on
that's true.
our website for strategic planning, and it's blank. But I'm glad to know that. I didn't know the minutes. I doubt you didn't see them. So
They
that's
were, yeah,
good.
so I figured because it was a board meeting, I would put them where the board meeting minutes would go.
Okay. See, I can learn something.
So I'm sorry, is the just out of that, are we posting all of the meetings on the city meetings, or are we posting it in the Portsmouth Graduate page?
So the schedule of the meetings
Yeah.
is being posted on the city.
The city.
On
Yeah.
the city.
Yeah,
We can replicate that on the tab
Yeah.
as well.
I just
And then we could, then we still have to do, in terms of the minutes, I think the minutes, I think the minutes can definitely land on the tab. We can do, I appreciate what Patty did, which was to post her minutes on the city website, which is what we do with board committees. So when,
I think that's why I'm getting confused. So,
what's the date on that?
Well, we just have to find the right place to
Yeah.
put them,
I
correct?
think,
no,
yeah.
but I think the criticism is fair, and we will move quickly to correct the situation.
My only ask is just like when the decision is made as to like the structure and the place.
Yeah.
That that's just communicated.
Yes.
I don't have a super strong opinion about where necessarily.
We just have a place
Yeah.
that's clear where people need to go in order
Yeah.
to find that information.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be the tab. So there's a singular clearinghouse. That's where you go. You're not flipping through. I think we'll continue to note so that I think we'll still post on the city site about the fact that things are occurring, just
Yeah.
that they're there. But kind of I would say the place for records to exist would be
Yeah.
a hub, which gives you all the information, the flow of where it came from.
Yeah, and I think those things that are time stamped at least a breadcrumb trail as far as like
Yep.
yeah.
That sounds good. Great.
Okay, it sounds like we have a plan. Pip?
So, given that we're posting the meetings, does that mean that they're public and open to the public, or we're just?
That's so it is a meeting of the group. The public has access to. So the public can show up
Okay.
at a meeting, but the
So
public is
that
not.
also means
is not an
board
equal-
members could show up to any meetings?
You
or
can
is that-
attend anything, but the intent
But
would
that's a
be,
quorum, there might be a quorum issue
Right.
in that case.
well, I think the intent is that people were picked to serve on certain committees. So if people come, it's like being a member of the public. The public can come
sit and-
to attend
And
and
listen.
view the
Okay.
meeting.
That's,
you're
I
not
actually
necessarily an active
misunderstood that. I thought we weren't able to attend other meetings. So you're saying we are, but we don't participate in them. We're there to, we can.
That was my understanding, is that was the approach, so that
Yeah.
you would have a certain distribution of board members with staff in each of those sessions, and that people were selected to serve in those roles. Otherwise, you could have 4 people in the community who just decide that, separate from the board, I'm going to everything, and I expect to be a participant like anybody else. And I don't think that's the way we're designed to do it right now.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, but anyone can attend, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
and that's why
Okay.
we're posting those, and have been posting where those meetings and when they're happening.
Okay. And I just wanted to second what Lisa said about giving the public some form of feedback, because I do think even at this point, I know they've had a lot of input already,
Yeah.
but I think we're at a different point now where we're talking about more specifics, and I would sort of hate for some ideas that came up originally in the sort of original brainstorm of what people wanted to see, those all got filtered down to like 10 different themes or something. But I'm afraid we may have lost some of the specific ideas that could have been very, ingenious and
Yeah.
might have gotten lost. And now we have new groups trying to come up with what could have already been seen. So I guess I'm curious sort of about the process and how that works and what happens to all of those, that sort of rich
Yeah.
work that people did, because now it's been filtered down to such sort of generalized stuff that I'm curious.
Yeah, I
whether
mean,
we'll
the
ever get back to
instructions
it
that
or how.
I've given, and I think Leah has given in the sessions, because one of the two of us have been at each of the different subcommittee meetings, is that my expectation of the groups is not that they are trying to be exact stewards of whatever came out of the survey, that they're informed by what came out of the survey and the focus groups. They're informed by the fact that it's a particular area, focus area that we're interested in. They're informed by the fact that they have to address equity and access, and they have to address staff training. But that they're going to come to a few high leverage strategies within those groups that they think are most going to advance things. And then once those are drafted in the next couple of rounds, we're going to draft that stuff over just a few meetings left. Then we would be moving back to the full group. All the subgroups come back together where people are talking about what they've done. There's an opportunity to talk about how we might be able to make some of those things jive. It goes back to captains to do some fine tuning. We are also going to be doing focus groups with community and with students and staff again to say, here's the draft. What's your feedback? And then go back and try to look at whether or not we have to do some additional changes. Then once we have a finalized draft of the objectives and the action, some of the action steps, then at that point, then we're coming back to those groups to talk about what are the data points we're going to use to determine whether or not we've advanced the ball in those areas. And then that would be one of the last things we do before we come back to the board to say, here are those focus areas, here are those high leverage strategies, here are some of the initial action steps that will be part, and here's the data points that we'll use to do it. So we can talk about, if people would like to set up email things for community to send in email suggestions based on, at any point in the process, things people would like to communicate. Happy to do that and include that as part of the website.
Okay, thanks. It sounds like I had forgotten that there would be another opportunity for people to weigh in, so
The focus groups.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, those are right now tentatively, I think it's I'm trying to remember, it's the 30th and the 1st, or it's the 1st and the 2nd, but will be posted soon.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
we have tentative dates.
It's the 30th and the 1st.
There we go.
Yep.
Nathan?
I wasn't sure.
Thank you, Pip.
I just wanted to make sure, to clarify from a statutory perspective, I think it was important to clarify that the way we were structured was the members of the committee are going to be engaging in committee work. The public is welcome to come and observe. I think if we're going to see 5 or more members of the board, it's going to be a quorum in the eyes of the statute regardless. So that's not to deter you from taking an interest in being a non-participant in the audience. But I think if we arrive at one of these moments and there are 5 board members in the room or more, I think we should talk very seriously about the fact that could be perceived as a quorum of the board, conducting business that's relevant to the board, and it wasn't posted as a board meeting. So if you think there's going to be that kind of interest, we need to talk about the posting requirements.
I agree. I guess we could say that if the 5th person walks in the room, that 5th person is going to have to leave. Is that appropriate? So if everybody could remember that, if you walk in and you're number 5, then you have to leave.
What if you're on the committee? What if you're on the committee?
If you're on the committee, that doesn't count. But, no, okay.
Insert
Lisa?
peekaboo here.
This is not a peekaboo question, but we had talked a while back about the individual committees getting a little bit more data that was collected in the first part so that we could get a handle on what were the things that were raised by people the most often that were relevant to the topics that that committee is tackling. And I wondered if we know when that is happening or if that's still an intention.
We can make sure that what's available is distributed to the team captains for each of those different groups.
Or I think there's another bigger meeting next week. Maybe that's a thing to bring to that meeting. Or what's it called? The strategic planning something?
The
group?
core group is when we come back together with all the smaller groups together.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But in terms of what Lisa's talking about, we can provide that information to the team captains, and they can utilize it with their groups as they see fit.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion. Is there anything else?
Library.
Oh, yeah. Zach and his
So,
library.
so just curious, has been discussion about outdoor space at the library at all?
That was a couple of topics around that, yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Because I think there's an ongoing conversation between PMS and the library about that outdoor space.
Yep.
How that outdoor space is going to be utilized and whose space is it? So
Whose
anyways,
parking spaces they are.
and whose parking spaces. So I think my impression is everybody's playing nice, but there might not be agreement right now on some of those issues, and just something that, as the conversation develops, I'd love to talk more about what's happening in that regard.
Okay.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay, anything else? It looks like we're on future agenda requests. If you have any requests, please get them to Brian and me, and we'll discuss them in our agenda meeting. Okay, we have to reopen the public comment.
Sorry.
Oh,
It's not.
Byron.
I didn't make it on the agenda, but I did want to on the housing committee that's been ongoing that I've been a part of. I did want to raise. There's been a direction around suggesting the old Bob Lister property for a suggestion to the council that they recommend that for partnership with the PHA. Just wanted to bring that and raise that with this board, so because I think that's relevant as far as like the old property. So that's been ongoing in that committee.
And you're on that committee?
Yeah.
Oh, great. That's an interesting one.
It
Right
is.
now, a hot topic. Okay. Well, thank you, Byron, for being on that. Okay, let's reopen the public comment. Is there anyone out there that would like to speak? I guess we will close the public comment. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
It's way too early.
Wow. This is the earliest meeting we have
Nancy?
ever had.
Rick, it's a Rick effect. You're
Nancy?
Yes, Liz.
Sorry, just before you adjourn, I don't want to embarrass Mr. Hugner, but I wanted to add in that, and I'm probably dating him now, that he was actually my science teacher in high school. So welcome aboard, Mr. Hugner.
Thank you, Liz.
You filled the volcano too, Liz. Do you remember that?
I don't think he gave us that opportunity unless I really had a. Maybe he discovered that with your son, but I think I was in the first class he had at Person High School, I want to say. Maybe.
Yeah, that's
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
The gray hair doesn't.
All right, I should admit, he
I'm
was
glad he's
my
still there,
teacher.
though.
Well, Rick, again, welcome. We're happy to have you. And,
teacher.
And every meeting's like this, 8:30.
yeah,
call it
every
a
meeting.
day.
I've watched them. I know that's a lie.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Roll call vote.
Roll call.
Liz Barrett.
Yes.
Pip Blues.
Yes.
Tish Campbell.
Yes.
Mary Nolte.
Yes.
Brian French.
Yes.
Nancy Kleberg.
Yes.
Lisa Rappaport.
Yes.
Lee Hudson.
Yeah.
Byron Matto.
Yes, please.
We're adjourned.